Welcome to 8-Limb Life, a podcast on living the 8 limbs of yoga, one step at a time. My name is Andra, and I am grateful you are sharing your time and presence with me as we explore this sacred wisdom. These teachings are ancient, but they're not meant to live in the past. They show up in how we speak, how we act, how we relate to others, and to ourselves. Each episode explores one of the limbs and how we can bring this wisdom into modern life. This is 8-Limb Life. Welcome to 8-Limb Life. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I'd like us to consider the little moments in life when we surprise ourselves. A small comment hurts more than it should, or we become defensive in a conversation. Maybe we worry about something that happened years ago, or find ourselves repeating a pattern we've promised to outgrow. And if we're honest, there are times we wonder, why am I like this? We may have our routines, our responsibilities, our identities, and our stories about who we are. We may react or judge or simply keep going. But every once in a while, life invites us to pause and become curious. The yogic tradition calls this pause Svadhyaya. Often translated as self-study, Svadhyaya is the practice of turning toward ourselves with interest and compassion. It is the willingness to observe our thoughts, our habits, our fears, and our longings, not to criticize them or fix them, but simply to know them. We cannot transform what we refuse to see, and we cannot live freely if our lives are being shaped by patterns we don't understand. Svadhyaya invites us to become students of our own experience, to notice what triggers us, to notice what brings us alive, to notice the stories we've inherited and the ones we keep telling ourselves. It is the quiet, courageous practice of paying attention. And in that attention, something remarkable begins to happen. We become less identified with every passing thought and emotion. We discover that there is a part of us that can simply witness it all with kindness and curiosity. Today, we'll explore this beautiful practice of self-study and begin to understand and know ourselves more deeply. First, let's take a moment to become more familiar with some common patterns we may know and recognize in ourselves and in the people around us. The most common patterns in our lives we may carry out over months, years, or even a lifetime. One example of a common pattern is catastrophizing. This is when we may assume the worst-case scenario and prepare for disasters that haven't even happened. Another pattern might be emotional guarding. This is where we keep people at arm's length because being vulnerable feels unsafe. Another common pattern, particularly in the yoga world, is conflict avoidance, where we might stay silent or minimize our own needs when something really needs to be said. These are just a few examples of some very common patterns, though there are many more. Through the practice of Svadhyaya, we become more familiar with the patterns flowing through our lives, and we begin to ask whether they truly serve us, or if it's time to let them go. Self-study isn't just analyzing ourselves or collecting insights about our personality. It's developing the capacity to observe our inner experience. The Yoga Sutras call the shift from being identified with our thoughts to simply noticing them, witnessing. This is stepping into the role of the witness, or witness consciousness. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," we begin to notice anxiety is present. Instead of, "I am an angry person," we may say, "Anger is arising right now." It's a subtle shift, but a profound one. The witness might say, "The need for approval is here," or "The inner critic is acting through me," or "Fear is present." The witness doesn't judge, fix, or shame. It simply sees. And in that seeing, there is freedom. This also connects beautifully to the famous sutra, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. When you quiet the fluctuations of the mind, that is yoga. All the asana, all the breath work, the meditation and spiritual practice is in service of quieting the mind. When the mind becomes quiet, the constant commentary softens. Often we realize there is no problem to solve, nowhere else to be, just awareness. Many of us have tasted these moments, a sense of spaciousness, clarity, or deep peace. Yoga teaches that these moments are precious, not because they create something new, but because they reveal something that has been here all along. Beneath the changing thoughts and emotions, there is an awareness that is steady and undisturbed. As we practice Svadhyaya, we learn both to notice the movements of the mind and to become familiar with the deeper stillness within us. The ancient yogis also understood Svadhyaya as the study of sacred texts, not to gather more information, but to encounter wisdom that helps us know ourselves more deeply. And these texts don't all come from one single tradition. For some, it may be the Yoga Sutras or the Bhagavad Gita. For others, like me, it may be the Tao Te Ching, the poetry of Rumi, the wisdom of Anandamayi, or the writings of Ram Dass. Really, any book that holds up a mirror to the soul is an invitation into Svadhyaya. The Bhagavad Gita unfolds on a battlefield, but many teachers remind us that this battlefield exists within each of us. It is the place where our fears, desires, responsibilities, and deepest truths all meet. We return to the Gita not because it gives us simple answers, but because it asks enduring questions. How do I live with integrity? What is mine to do? How do I act wholeheartedly without becoming attached to the outcome? And then there is the Tao Te Ching, a text of extraordinary simplicity and depth. Again and again, it invites us to soften our grip, to trust the unfolding of life, and to remember that there is wisdom in gentleness. It reminds us that forcing and striving are not the only ways to move through the world. These texts can become companions. We read the same passage at 25 and understand one thing. We read it again at 45 and hear something entirely different. The words have not changed. We have. And that too is Svadhyaya. Let's consider the 78th entry in the Tao Te Ching. This interpretation is by Stephen Mitchell. It says, "Nothing in the world is as soft and yielding as water. Yet, for dissolving the hard and inflexible, nothing can surpass it. The soft overcomes the hard. The gentle overcomes the rigid. Everyone knows this is true, but few can put it into practice." I think this passage is truly in the spirit of Svadhyaya, because if we're honest, many of us approach ourselves with hardness. We criticize our habits. We judge our fears. We become impatient with our choices and our patterns and demand that they change. But deep transformation rarely happens through force. It happens through gentle awareness, through sitting with ourselves long enough to understand why a pattern developed in the first place, through meeting our fears with curiosity instead of condemnation, through noticing an old story and saying, "Ah, there you are again," rather than, "What's wrong with me?" Like water, our awareness can be soft and patient, and over time, that softness has the power to reshape even the most deeply rooted patterns within us. The soft overcomes the hard. Perhaps nowhere is this more true than in the way we learn to know ourselves. I'd like to suggest one simple practice of Svadhyaya. Choose a wisdom text. It doesn't need to be long or complicated. Find a book that speaks to your heart and return to it again and again. It could be The Power of Now or A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. It could be The Seat of the Soul by Gary Zukav. I will suggest a few other options in the show notes. You could read a few lines in the morning, or keep it by your bedside and look at it at night. You might open it when you're confused or grieving, even when you're celebrating. Maybe when you're simply trying to remember who you are. Over time, these texts become less like books and more like old friends. They walk beside us. They ask us questions. They challenge us and comfort us. Often, they help reveal parts of ourselves that we couldn't see on our own. This is the gift of Svadhyaya, the courage to turn inward, and the humility to seek wisdom beyond ourselves, trusting that both paths can lead us home. Thank you for being here and for exploring these ancient teachings together with me. If this episode resonated with you, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe, leave a review, or share it with someone who might need these teachings in their life. Until next time, may your practice continue to unfold, both on and off the mat. Namaste.